Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SunDevilSource Podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman here with you today. Some breaking news out of ASU football. We'll get to that, of course, with the new indoor facility. And then we have a full around the horn of all the Big Four sports at ASU. We'll talk hockey nearing the end of its season. Bobby Hurley's big win, what it could look like for the rest of the season, and then ASU baseball facing a big test this week after a hot start to the season. So, Chris, we'll start right off the bat with the thing that everybody in Tempe is excited about right now. Everybody in the Valley is excited about it. ASU has accelerated its groundbreaking on the new practice facility. It's going to be north of Mullet Arena and then west of what used to be Packard Stadium. And the cost has gone up to $55 million, which is about double what they thought it was initially going to cost. So, I mean, what else do you know about the facility? There's a mystery donor that they're not unveiling yet. And just kind of seems like there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to be going on in there.
Yeah, so really impressive looking building that we saw there. Kenny Dillingham, if you remember, called for someone to write a $20 million check last year in a viral type of a scrum with reporters, and a lot of people scoffed at that. And now it seems that ASU has secured an low eight-figure donation by somebody who's a prominent local business figure whose company's done some partnerships with ASU's campus, but not athletics. You're seeing some of these images. The doubling the scope of this thing from 26 million to 55 million, having 170 yards when you include the end zones, 170 yards of indoor practice field is basically not anything that's been done in the country. We had our other SunDevilSource staffers take a look at all the SEC, Big Ten, ACC teams, and Texas A&M has 160 yards of indoor field. So if this, the design that they put out there is now going to be attached in the next week or two to an architectural firm and construction company. But if it ends up meeting the vision that they have here to have 170 yards of field, I think that would be unprecedented in the country. And then 120 yard outdoor field, full outdoor field. Most places have at least two full outdoor fields. They're only going to have one, but again, they're going to have more indoor field. And the indoor field is going to have a tall enough roof, it seems, to be able to have your punting, which that wasn't something that they could do without worrying about the ball hitting the top of the bubble structure in the Dickey Dome, which is an inflatable thing. So this is a really significant development because it will move the facility to within a minute or so walk of their locker rooms and where all their meetings are. Right now, they have to either walk 10 minutes to get to the east side of Rural on 6th, where they have the Kachikawa practice fields and the Dickey Dome, or they have to shuttle the guys back and forth on carts, golf carts or other vehicles. There was even a car accident that people may remember from several years ago involving Jalen Conyers and others, when two vehicles that were driven by ASU players collided. So, there's some safety issues that have happened in the past by doing this all the time, or taking golf carts across Rural Road. That's an intersection where there's been a bunch of accidents. And I think that this structure, the $55 million, is going to include, I think, $7 million for a new volleyball facility, not where there's going to be games, just like a practice facility and all their offices and everything. So football component is more like a $48 million, but that's a very significant thing for a building of this size and magnitude, and should have a lot of impact on the program moving forward.
I mean, you said this was one of the only things like it in the country, so that's kind of a big deal in itself. But I mean, with how near and dear football and the football program is to ASU part. It's not like an SEC team where you think you're going to win every year. There's, when you win, it's kind of a lot to hold on to. And, people hold on to that Peach Bowl season because it was so special. So for a program like ASU that isn't, this blue blood program that you expect to be in the conversation every year, that has so many millions of dollars being pumped into it every year. Why is this such a big deal for ASU and for its fans?
Well, look, Kenny Dillingham was in this process of trying to figure out whether or not he wanted to sign an extension, a new contract with ASU, and there was a lot of conversation about that. I think that he wanted to see more university support as one of the elements of that. This pretty much shows that you got a lot of university support. You're going to put one of the nicest looking indoor practice facilities in the country that has the most space of any indoor practice facility, potentially in square footage, with 170 yards of space. That shows that you're dedicated to football. And it took Michael Crow and Graham Rossini and ASU's administration and university support to push the booster community in a lot of ways to help with NIL and to help with getting this building funded. I think those are instruments of how serious that ASU is clearly in terms of what it wants to accomplish with Kenny Dillingham at the helm, in concert with what it did with the structuring of his contract. So it's a really big deal. The other, part of this, of course, is that you're going to show recruits and transfer portal players, hey, look at our building. And then they're going to maybe compare that to other places that they're going to go around the country. If you have an inflatable bubble structure, that doesn't hit the same way as having this just steps from where you have all of your facilities that are already great in the student athlete facility. So you put these things together, and the stadium, of course, was recently renovated a decade or so ago, and it looks very nice, and they sold out every game this past season. And if you stack these things up where they have their staff is remaining intact, they've got $2.2 million, I think, in additional staffing support beyond Dillingham to try to keep their coaches intact. You got the facilities, the biggest sort of glaring thing missing from their facility that's now there. The university support is there. This is already a great place for students to want to live and gravitate to. You have everything. The university is in the best place that it's probably ever been in terms of its perception, reputation, everything. You're bringing all of these things together. ASU is giving the most scholarship support. It's giving the maximum that it could to football in terms of revenue sharing. A lot of things are lining up for ASU right now.
Well, do you know, have they announced what they're going to do with the old practice field yet? Do they know what they're going to do with that?
I think that all of that is going to become part of the whole Novus corridor, where they'll end up having parking structures in multi-use buildings. As you know, they just opened up a massive apartment complex that's just to the south of the Dickey Dome. And I think there's going to be a lot more of office/high-rise apartment structuring, more restaurants and retail all along rural, including where Packard used to be. That's going to be just east of where this new facility is going to be. Yeah,
I looked at that apartment right next to the practice field. It was not in the college student price range, I'll tell you that much. But as far as the fans, I mean, the tailgating scene right now is, people scattered across different rooftop parking garages and even inside parking garages, and then in the street, and there's, right where they do the Devil's Walk there by the stadium, there's all kinds of vendors and clubs and events lined up there. So what is this going to do to kind of centralize the tailgating scene and make it's one thing?
I think this is going to be a game changer, especially for the upscale tailgating environment. If you look at one of the one of the renderings, you can maybe throw them back up on the screen, the one that has the indoor. It has like parceled out. You see where there's like a bunch of, areas on the far side there where there's like people sitting. I think what you're going to see ultimately is, because remember, Kenny Dillingham talked about wanting this to be an atmosphere like the 16th hole at the Waste Management Open, right? Well, how do you make that happen? You sell these loge tailgating premium boxes where you can put maybe up to a few dozen fans in each of them, and you have them every 10 yards or so, right? You could do it on either side. So now you got, maybe a couple dozen, 2-3 dozen of these at the Waste Management Open, which has the best, luxury experience, probably. The stadium, there's like 30,000, 40,000 fans on one hole, and it's extremely expensive, and sort of there's a very high price point for companies to get in. And I think that ASU and the Valley are a lot different than a lot of places around the country, Gabby, because a lot of college towns, they don't have that much corporate business. They don't have a lot of high net worth companies. And the same companies that want to do the Phoenix Open, a lot of them are probably as a perk to give tickets to people that work for them or people that they're trying to impress and do deals with. This is going to be like a luxury thing to be able to have 20, 30, 40 of these luxury boxes for every single game, where you have all your bathrooms that are in this building. You have the ability to have concessions and TVs, and it's an air-conditioned space, which you're not going to be able to get anywhere else. And I think what they'll probably do, Kenny Dillingham's a visionary person. I'm sure that he's going to want Devil Walk to go through this, like probably right down the middle of this thing, while all the ASU's higher, net worth and big time fans are lining this thing, and it's an experience, right? So this has an opportunity, I think, in the biggest building, or one of the biggest buildings of its kind in the country, to really change the tailgating experience. Like, as you said, the grass areas have been kind of canceled out around campus, and a lot of people are tailgating on blacktop or on the roofs of parking garages. And this gives another option where you're invariably going to have many hundreds, probably a few thousand ASU fans that are being able to gather in this hub that's going to be the place where everybody kind of wants to be before ASU football games.
Well, I don't think anybody in the Valley is going to say no to free AC in the middle of summer when the season's starting until like November. And I know
free may be a misnomer. I'm guessing that there'll probably be a smaller area that's going to be carved out for like the more casual fans, and maybe they'll have to be, first come, first serve. They're lining up for this space, or there's a lottery to be able to access some of this space, or they have like an area where people can come in and out, and it's being managed how many people can get in, just like that exists on the 16th hole at the Phoenix Open. The people who are racing at 4 a.m. lined up to try to get to those spots. So this is going to be upscale, for the most part, but this is the type of thing where you want to, like, the goal for ASU football and the administration and the university is to make this a destination place where everybody feels like they want to be a part of it, right? And a lot of people may not even go to the games. They may just hang in this space and party and watch the thing on the big screen, and they're adjacent, and this is part of the experience. I just think that this is going to really elevate the, especially when you have so many businesses in the Valley that are almost invariably going to want to participate in this, and it's going to be a revenue driver. I mean, we're talking about I wouldn't be surprised if something like this might cost more than $50,000 for each one of these nodes that they have for an entire season, maybe 100,000 potentially. I think Waste Management is up to like 200,000 for a week. and companies, they'll go in partnership, some of them. So there'll be like a few companies all come together. You'll probably have some families of ASU fans that all kind of pool their resources to be able to get these. You're going to have probably dozens of seats in each one of these that people can have, and you can invite different people to different weeks to tailgate with you in this thing. I think this is going to be a special thing, the likes of which that we have never seen around ASU from a tailgating standpoint.
And do we have like a opening date or a year set?
So they moved up. This was not going to break ground until January of next year. And now they're looking to have a groundbreaking that's more like late spring, early summer. So really it's at least 6 months moved up. And then it's probably going to take about a year to a year and a half to get this thing built, So we're talking about potentially a year and a half from now for the start of their preparations for the 2027 season. I would say the worst case scenario would be at the end of that season, and they're in there for spring football beginning in 2028.
Of course, that's the season right after I graduate, Chris.
Don't worry, Gabby.
Jokes that your school adds the cool stuff right the year after you graduate. It actually happened to me in high school, and now here we are again. But
SunDevilSource alumni will always be welcome back, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure you get into that building for the best experience.
Well, I hope Luke and Joaquin get to enjoy it for a year at least.
They should
be around, and I know you guys will enjoy the AC if they move all those fall camp practices inside.
Listen, my future skin cancer is going to be thanking me because people, I think they do get it, right? But when you're outside, like Kenny Dillingham likes to practice outside. They're trying to acclimate players for the season. And I've spent hundreds and hundreds of days out there in 100-degree weather, lathered up with sunscreen, wearing the wide brims and all that stuff. And
the signature Chris bucket hat.
Bucket hat, right? So this is gonna be this is gonna make things a lot better. I'm sure they'll still want to toughen up the guys and be practicing outside a fair amount so that they're acclimated for the season and have an advantage over their opponents.
Well, maybe there'll be some shade then, at least for us to stand in. But very exciting stuff. All jokes aside, it's really a huge thing for this program, and I'm excited to come back and see it. I feel that's so weird saying that. I'm like almost done.
None of us are getting younger, Gabby.
That's so weird. I still remember like on the phone with you my freshman year, and I was like trying to like sell myself and like get this job, and then here we are. It's crazy to think about how time flies, but I'm talking like I'm 80. I'm 19.
You've got a couple of years left. You're fine.
All right, ASU hockey. Let's talk some puck, Chris. I don't know if you were up for the gold medal game at 6 a.m., but it was
watch the whole thing.
Quite riveting stuff. Hockey's so fun. All right, but ASU hockey season hasn't been quite as fun as that Olympic game was. Near the conclusion of the season, 8th place in the NCHC. They're just 1 point up on Omaha. And that 9th place team is the only team to not make the NCHC conference quarterfinals and then the tournament as a whole, obviously. At the end of the season, Omaha hosts Miami, who's another team in the bottom half of the standings. So that's a much easier task to try and earn some points than what ASU has. ASU's playing number 8, Denver, at altitude. Greg Powers has talked about, day 2, especially how the altitude can really start to get to the players. I grew up in Denver, so I'll be there. And I always I grew up there. So whenever people talk about altitude, I'm like, I don't know, man. I just
fully acclimated.
I'm acclimated, but so ASU won on senior night versus Omaha last weekend, 6-3, and then on Friday night lost, not as similar as a result. And Greg Powers said the first 5 minutes they played really well. They scored a goal, and then Omaha scored one minute later. And he said they looked like they didn't care. They played like they didn't care. The effort wasn't there. And he said, I know they care, but they didn't play like they cared. And that's not a great game to play like you don't care when your season is on the line and, you know, they know that their season's on the line. So that's kind of concerning.
I think that's concerning for several reasons. But the biggest is you don't want to have a coach who can't reach his players, which he also said, like, not that long ago, followed by concerns about whether or not they're actually giving their all with their season on the line. Like, they had a great season last year, second in the NCHC in their first season in this tougher conference, right? They lost a lot of their players, a lot of their best players. Greg Powers made some decisions to go more inexperienced. Like, he added a bunch. They have their most freshmen that they've had, and they're on the younger, more inexperienced side. And they lost two of their best players, Colin Potter and Jack Beck, to season-ending injuries. And look, those things are very difficult to overcome. I don't think that they were going to lose those guys given the makeup of their team and where they were at, and they weren't going to make an NCAA tournament or anything like that. But it's still incumbent upon a coaching staff to make sure that your guys are playing with a sense of urgency and purpose and trying to be the best version of themselves and maximize their season and build for the future, individually, their own careers, and collectively what we're trying to do at ASU. And when coaches, it's always a concerning thing when coaches say that they can't reach their players or that guys aren't playing hard. That's a check mark against those coaches. And if that is anomalous, like, let's say that we fast forward in a year from now, that wasn't a concern. Okay, then that was maybe a one-off. But if that stuff happens again, then you go, okay, well, the players are largely different. What is the thing that is continuing to be an issue? And I think a lot of this stuff nowadays, Gabby, and really probably forever in college sports, but when you have all these players that are coming in from different places and you have to have them gel and come together and have a sense of community and purpose, it makes the job of the coaches really tough to be able to get them to be fully invested and bought in and understand your culture. But also, that's where great coaches and great programs distinguish themselves. And you'll remember there was a viral moment from North Dakota's assistant coach who basically alluded to this, not even alluded, he said these players are at ASU because it's a different sort of it's an enjoyable lifestyle, right? You come to North Dakota because you want it hard. Because they don't have all of those nice, fun, things that you can do in Scottsdale and Tempe, right? That's not a good look when you say those things, and then your coach is saying he can't get through to the players, and then he's saying that they're not playing really hard. The coaching staff has to, identify people who have the right type of intensity, makeup, to build the right leadership, to have them in place so they demand those things of their teammates. And then you need to make sure that the competitive DNA of the players that you bring into the program meet the standard that you have already set and what you have as your expectations. Otherwise, you're going to be knocking your head against the wall, as Greg Powers, I'm sure, has been at times this season, trying to get these guys to have his level of fire and passion and determination. And ultimately, I hate to say it, but it's coaching that determines whether or not that is in place or not. And you can give him a do-over, a mulligan for a season like this once when you have the type of catastrophic injuries that they've had. But there's no coaching. We would never cover a football team, a basketball team, where we didn't say the exact same thing. And Greg Powers, I think, has done a great job to get ASU to this place as a hockey program. Having Mullet Arena, being second in their first NCHC season, the type of recruiting that they've been able to do, the caliber of the players that they brought in from a talent standpoint, NFL draft picks and the like, All those things are great. Okay, now you have to actually develop them at a high level. They've had lots of giveaways of the puck. Defensively, there's been lapses all over the place that you can't have and expect to also be a really good team. They've been very top-heavy in terms of their production on the offensive side. When those guys have gone out, they haven't gotten enough from their other players. Okay, that comes down to the talent identification, the DNA of the makeup of the people that you bring into the program, and the leadership that you have in your top players to expect the same thing from the guys beneath of them. And all of those things come down ultimately to coaching.
Well, Greg Powers got the extension until 2030. That's a fully endowed contract. The ASU hockey head coaching position is now a fully endowed position, regardless of who's holding it. So it will be interesting to see how things play out until then. Another interesting thing to know, I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the season, but ASU's strategy this year was to go so heavy on the freshmen, bring in a lot of new guys, and Omaha actually kind of did the same thing. They went like full CHL, the rule change to allow CHL players into the NCAA. They went like full out with that. And those are the two worst teams in the conference. So kind of interesting to see how that played out.
And look, they may get most of their best players back next year. There could be a lot of continuity. Potter and Beck could be back. A lot of these freshmen who came in could be back. Okay, that's good. If they're going to show the type of intestinal fortitude and effort and leadership that you need to have in your program, right? Like they can take this as a learning experience. They can grow a lot. They're probably going to be a lot better with their individual skill level for all these guys, in addition to being bigger and stronger and older and more experienced, right? All those things are great. So maybe this is just chalk it up to a learning experience where you lost a couple of your best players and had a couple other guys leave to other, because they wanted other experiences or they weren't playing to the degree they wanted or whatever. But you have to take this and you have to learn from this in terms of how you approach roster building, skill development, and having players be fully bought into what you're doing.
Well, he said on Saturday that the biggest thing he learned this season was that success doesn't happen through osmosis. And, he had a very successful year last year, right on the bubble, right on the cusp of getting an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. And then the last year as an independent team 2 seasons ago, a very good year as well, but it's just hard to get into the tournament as an independent team. So said, I think we all learned that the hard way this year. So we'll see how everything plays out in the off season with transfers, newcomers, and what the season next year ultimately holds. All right, let's talk some ASU basketball now. Bobby Hurley got maybe the biggest win of his tenure last Tuesday against number 13 Texas Tech. It was quite a scene out there. There was a court storm, but not a whole lot of people there. It was a 9 p.m. tip. I saw that, and I was praying for you guys who had to go out there that late. But he gave ASU with that win a plausible pathway to get into the bubble conversation. Needed to win most of its remaining games, and then lost at Baylor, not a good team, despite being up 10, and they just weren't playing well. So a tale of 2 games there.
Yeah, I think ASU played reasonably well against Baylor for most of the game, but then had a 10-point lead, as you said. And Baylor's better than its record. Like the Big 12 is probably the best conference in college basketball, and Baylor's a 4-win team in the Big 12 now. But it's a little bit deceiving because I think their NCAA net ranking is like in the top 50 maybe. They're not good enough to where they're going to be an NCAA tournament team or even on the bubble given their conference record, I would say at this point. But so that. I think ASU was like a very slight underdog going into that game. But what ASU had accomplished was moved up several spots to, I think, 68th in the NCAA net by beating Texas A&M. The reason it was the biggest win for Hurley is because he's in his final season of his contract. And his team is playing for his future at ASU, whether or not that's going to happen. And they have big games that are up and coming on their schedule. They're going to play against Iowa State coming up, and Kansas. They're hosting Kansas next week. So, but they needed some additional wins before then to really give themselves some momentum and some energy in terms of the way the bracketology views them right now. They're not even in the conversation of more work to do at this point. But had they beaten Baylor, followed by I went over TCU. They played TCU Tuesday. We're recording this on Monday. And then Utah, which is probably the worst Big 12 team at home. Had they won those 3 games before playing Kansas and Iowa State, right, and then beaten Kansas or Iowa State, one of them. Okay, now they would have probably been in the bubble conversation. But they lost, and they didn't play well down the stretch. They were 1 of 9 from the field to end the game, and the end game execution was poor. Masamba Diop, he's a freshman, but he took a really bad decision, low percentage shot with less than a minute left. This happened when ASU had 2 timeouts, and Hurley decided not to use one of the timeouts. So there's questions about end game decision, strategy, execution. And the problem for ASU is that has already been a thing. Like, they almost gave away the Texas Tech game after being up big, like 11 points and 3 minutes left. In their prior game, they lost after being up like 15 or 16 points at UCF, which is a bubble team, on the road, a game that they absolutely should have won. And they also played poorly down the stretch in losses against West Virginia, Colorado, and Oregon State. Now, if ASU had won several of those games, a few of those games, we're now talking about a team that's already on the bubble. And that's the difference between literally not just having a chance to make the tournament and being an extraordinarily unlikely candidate at this point, and also the difference between Bobby or Hurley having a much more realistic opportunity to return to ASU next season versus the current situation.
Well, to that point, Graham Rossini went on Arizona Sports last week and said they're still continuing to evaluate given everything that's happened. I mean, what do you think will be the ultimate outcome here?
Yeah, that's what a good AD is always going to say in a situation like this. I don't have any inside knowledge about how far likely that he is in his mind right now to making a coaching change. I do think that it does depend in part on what happens here at the conclusion of the season. But I've never seen in my career a basketball coach at ASU coaching in the last season of his deal. That in and of itself tells you that this is somebody who needs to deliver a result in order to be asked back. And I will give Hurley credit where credit is due. They were picked last in the Big 12. They lost their entire roster, essentially, which they've had a revolving door of players for a few years now. It's been one of the biggest problems that they've had. He's done a very good job of bringing in talent year over year. They haven't necessarily always played to their talent level. So even though they did a very good job, I think, of getting Mo Odom and finding Pick Johnson from an NAIA team and getting Mayusin from overseas, and Masamba Diop's been a revelation, and he's a future NBA player. Okay, really impressive that they were able to put together that type of a team in the final year of a coach who, seems to be like a, lame duck situation, right? But what they have accomplished is still insufficient, in my opinion, barring some extremely strong finish to the season, like needing to beat some ranked teams, needing to put themselves into the NCAA tournament conversation. Before the season, I thought they were going to have to make an NCAA tournament or bust. But, for Hurley to be able to continue at ASU. Masamba Diop's done a very good job. He's developed. If he expresses a desire to return to ASU, it's to play for Hurley, and maybe Noah Mayusin does as well, and some of these other players that have remaining eligibility, and they finish with a strong conclusion here over the next couple of weeks, it's not out of the question that Graham Rossini and ASU may consider continuing with Hurley. I just view it as still unlikely in the aggregate that they're going to be in that particular situation here in 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, like you said, 2 games against unranked teams, TCU and Utah, and then 2 ranked games to cap off the season, Kansas. That game's on my birthday, by the way. And then last game of the season at Iowa State. Iowa State moved up to number 4, and Kansas State is 14 right now. So
they better win 3 of those games, Gabby. And then even with that, they're probably going to have to win a game or 2, at least perhaps, in the Big 12 tournament to achieve their goal. Mo Odom, very good, addition for ASU, and he wants to go out with an NCAA tournament appearance. And he's had some great performances, and also a lot of shaky moments, and almost like pressing or forced shots and things at times. But I really think he's been a great player and a really good point guard for ASU on the offensive end. Defense, not as much. This isn't as good of a defensive team. I will say they played better defensively in the last week, and it's going to take a continued effort in that respect to have the type of success that's needed for them to be in that conversation.
Alrighty, well, tall task ahead. See if they step up to the plate, which brings me to my next point. Let's talk some ASU baseball. Off to a hot start on a much more positive note for ASU fans. 7-0, first 7-0 start since the 2019 season. Really good pitching. There was kind of a lot of question marks surrounding what their pitching was going to look like, but it's been good so far. And then, as expected, good hitting. But it's been against some lower level competition. Now, though, Beckett Dvorak just said this over the weekend after they swept St. John's. He said, feel like we still have a lot to prove. I feel like there's a lot more we can do. No better way to do that than with you're playing 4 teams in a row that are ranked. So Oklahoma, they have a midweek series Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they'll play at Globe Life for the Amegy Bank series. So they'll start that this weekend against Mississippi State, and then Tennessee, and then Texas A&M. So quite the gauntlet ahead for ASU, and no better chance to prove yourself than now.
Yeah, you're going to get your chance in a hurry there, Dvorak, and they said that they, I think it was him. I think it was him who said that they feel like they've been slept on a little bit here. 4 SEC opponents, all of whom are ranked in the top 25. We're going to find out really quick whether they warrant national prominence in that conversation, right? Like, I think Warren Nolan has ASU around 15th in the RPI right now. That's very good. But also they 7-0, wow, the first time since 2019, the first time under Willie Bloomquist. That's what really should happen for ASU baseball historically, right? When you're playing against that caliber of opponent, like St. John's is not good. UConn, they're okay. Omaha, it's solid mid-major, but ASU at home should be 7-0. Now, the very positive things, I think, to take away from the first 2 weeks, they're pitching. It's been the thing that's held back ASU in recent seasons. It's really hard to acquire the depth of the staff, your anchors there from a starting standpoint. And they did a pretty good job last year to get Friday and Saturday anchors who were among the top pitchers in the Big 12 and strikeouts and some other categories. They lost both of those guys drafted in the top 10 rounds. But Cole Carlone, a big question going into the season was whether he would be able to extend his arm to turn into a Friday anchor starter for them, as opposed to being somebody whose the velocity and the command deteriorates over after you get through 3 or 4 innings. And he had a great outing this past Friday where he threw 80-something pitches and still had his velocity on the last pitch. The guy's got 11 innings pitched. The opposing batting average is like $135 or something, and it looks like he's ready. Now we'll have to see as the innings pile up on his arm if he's able to sustain that. And then Colin Linder, really good job in 2 starts. I mean, so their command has been good. Their starting pitching has done a good job. They've had several impressive performers come out of the pen in support of those guys. I think not everything has been great. Easton Barrett, his starts on Sunday have been very underwhelming and short. So that could lead ASU to revisit whether or not Willie Bloomquist wants to move Cole Klecker, the TCU transfer, who was good in a midweek start. He was really impressive a couple years ago at TCU, and then had some things not go right for him last year, but now transferred to be home. And let's see what happens. Maybe he ends up moving into a Sunday role. Let's see how they shuffle some of this stuff around. But the test of the SEC opponents is going to be massive. And on the hitting side, they lost their top 7 home run hitters from last season. They added a bunch of guys via the portal. Smaldino is coming out, and he's smacking the ball around. And Dean Toigo is he's 3 homers already. And then the guys that they have that they returned have done a really good job. Landon Hairston, he's one of their best prospects and one of their best players, and he's absolutely crushing the ball right now. And New Contradas, who had the broken bone in his hand last year that cost him last season after an impressive freshman debut at ASU. He's already hit 3 homers, and his slugging is off the charts right now. So a lot of really positive things here, and they're going to get to find out how they measure up against 4 SEC teams in a 6-day gauntlet.
Should be interesting to see for sure. I mean, all these pieces look like they're coming together now. But yeah, like we were saying, pretty big test this weekend, and we'll see how things unfold. ASU comes back home after that to host Loyola Marymount, and then the first of 5 meetings is on March 10th. That Teacup series against U of A. So plenty of content for the rivalry and the fans on the baseball front with the Teacup this year. But that's going to do it for everything we have on this week's edition of the SunDevilSource podcast. We have a pretty exciting announcement coming soon that we've already posted about and let you guys know if you're on the SunDevilSource Sanctuary. So if you're not, why not? No better place to be. So that'll be exciting. We'll have an official announcement about that, probably coming out tomorrow, Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. And it's super exciting. I'm very excited about it. It's in partnership with our presenting sponsor, Jones Auto Center. So Parker Jones, thank you for all your support as always. And we're very excited for this semi-mystery event that'll be going down. So until next time, Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman for the SunDevilSource podcast. We will see you in the next one.